Welcome to No One Alone with Trott, the podcast exploring the crucial intersection of healthcare innovation and entrepreneurship.
Hi, I'm here with my guest, Mike Chilen, and Mike and I have known each other for a really long time, almost 20 years, I think. So Mike is a longtime quantum health client with many different companies, not just one, but he's currently the Global Director of Benefits and Mobility at Mary Kay. Mary Kay currently has over 5,000 employees and millions of independent beauty consultants worldwide. I think we know them from the pink Cadillacs and everything, and offers more than 200 premium products in 35 countries. And most of the development and everything is in Dallas, Texas, which is where Mike is. And so, Mike, thanks for being here. And you have a pink Cadillac there.
I do have a pink Cadillac behind me. Thank you for having me, Kara. It is always a pleasure to see you and to get to spend time with you.
Oh, likewise. Can you just give us a little bit of background in terms of kind of what your mindset was on, whether or not you had any ability to impact people's experiences and the cost of their care before you and I met? And then I'm going to ask you how you and I kind of met in our first few conversations.
Yes. Before I met you, Kara, I had been working for large Fortune 50 type companies for a long time, for over 20 years. And, when you are working for a large company like that, you typically get the best of the best when it comes to consultants, either in the healthcare space or someplace else, because the plans are more complex and you have more money. So you typically get the best of the best. And then when I met you some 20 years ago, you introduced what I describe as a new mousetrap. I had never heard one of our consultants focus on what you were focusing on, which was the 90% of the healthcare costs that is driven by the employee and their dependents. It was sort of a given up to that point that part of the spend was something we couldn't do anything about. We were huge, large multinational companies, and the assumption was that whatever the national healthcare trend rate was, because we were so large, our company healthcare trend rate was going to be about the same. And so we focused on the 8% or 10% of fixed costs. And those fixed costs are the dollars that you're spending on consultants and the administrators of your plan, et cetera. And you were the first person I had spoken to in this space who was focused on the 90% of the spend, what the employee and their dependents spent for healthcare. And you were convinced that you could help employees maneuver through the complicated U.S. healthcare system and get better health outcomes for themselves while also saving the company money. And you were so convincing in that conversation, and you were so determined and so smart. I just knew I needed to hitch my wagon up to this horse, because I knew you were gonna make it successful. And then at the end of the conversation, I will never forget this conversation. I've repeated it many times. You made the comment that, Mike, I just want to make this world a better place. I really am doing this for that reason, and I want to leave this world a better place than I found it. And that has stuck with me for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Well, and that's still my driving motive. It's the motive behind the company. I mean, obviously we have to run a business here, but boy, yeah, my just my experience had been that, and I think I came, the good news is I came to it as an outsider, and I looked at how people were journeying through healthcare and how horrible an experience it was. And I just thought there has to be some way to fix this. And in my prior life, I had fixed it for other kinds of businesses, but was very clear to me that in healthcare, nobody really thought about you could actually be working with the end user and help them guide them through this experience and get something better from it. So I think that the insight as an outsider meant I wasn't saddled with all the ideas that you can't, you can't, you can't. And I think it worked out pretty well. So I'm curious, so you had some interesting experiences during your first few years in your first company working with us in terms of what you actually saw in the results and what you saw in terms of how the employees responded to it. Because that was a big question. I think there were some concerns about how people might react to this. So, yeah, tell me a little bit about, kind of your first experience with this product.
You know, we were a bit concerned, about whether this could work when we considered signing on with Quantum Health. But you made it easy for us to sign on. I don't think this is still necessarily an option today, but back in those days, it was your comment was, if I don't save you money, then you don't owe me any money. So you had a model back in those days where that the costs, what we paid you for the service was a percentage of the savings. And so we thought, why not? Why not give it a chance? Our biggest concern at that point was, our healthcare trend rate was in the 10 to 15% range. And, that couldn't continue. And so we were looking for a way to reduce that. And then, the fact that you were going to do it in such a manner to give our employees a better experience with the healthcare system, it was worth the chance. Working with Quantum has been so easy. It was easy for me to convince other companies to do this because the experience that I had with the first company where we introduced this was the same as the next three, which was that you were able to reduce our costs from a trend rate of 10 or 15% down to somewhere in the neighborhood of 0 to 4%, while at the same time, I started getting cards and letters, emails, texts from employees telling me that the Quantum was one of the best things that we had as a company had ever done for employees. And up to that point, I had never gotten cards and letters from employees thanking me for the healthcare system. Most of the cards and letters that I got from employees were cards and letters, complaining about what wasn't working in the healthcare system. So you accomplished two things, or Quantum Health accomplished two things. You saved us a tremendous amount of money while making the experience that our employees had much, much better.
So it worked. And it worked repeatedly. Yeah, because I always get asked the question like, oh, isn't there an ideal, kind of client and everything? And I always say, well, I say people are people, right? So
Yeah.
the people that work in manufacturing are the same as the ones that work in retail, education, health systems. They sell cosmetics. They're all humans, and healthcare is one of those quintessential human experiences. That's a great, unfortunately, equalizer at the low end of the experience. And um, I think that while so many things change around us, the fundamental human experience of healthcare doesn't change. And I was always struck by the fact that nobody chooses to have a healthcare journey. They're thrust into it. And when they're thrust into it, then you have this automatic kind of, I would say it's almost a primal response. Your executive functions shut down. You're in a state of stress. A lot of people describe it like Dorothy being dropped in Oz, and the familiar is unfamiliar, and you're told to kind of go down this path. And at the end of this path will be your new normal, whatever that is. And I think it's really, really people in the industry, I think, really underestimate the ability of the human being on a journey. By the way, you're on it because something's wrong with you. And the ability of them to absorb additional stress, to understand what's happening, to even understand the dialogue. you get these, your body part, your a claim, they don't interact with even your benefits. So they don't even know things like what's a deductible, those kinds of questions. And you just get this mass confusion. But along with it, you have a health system delivery system that is so complex. And it's hard for people to know what to do. Even inside a big system, there's not a lot of communication. People are, you know, meeting with their doctors and being told something, and they have to go execute on that. And they often don't know. And I just thought that there was a chance if you could get in the middle of it. In our case, we like to get in it through the physician first for most of the time. And that's a real differentiator because we're able to be way ahead of that experience and help them. So I'm curious from your standpoint. So you've been at this for a really long time. I've been at this for a long time. Always the question I get, and I'm curious as to how you answer as well, isn't all this stuff going to make this business irrelevant? What would you say to that?
I think the next 5 to 10 years in the healthcare space is going to be the most exciting 5 to 10 years that I've experienced in my 35 years of doing this. I think there's so much going on in terms of new procedures to help people have better health outcomes or cure them. There are drugs being produced that are curing things that used to kill people in a matter of months. But all of those things are going to get more and more expensive. The system is not going to get any less complex. And there is as much a need for a company like Quantum as there ever has been. In fact, I see there being tremendous opportunity for you all to continue partnering with our employees to give them better outcomes and to help us save money. Like you said, I've been doing this a long, long time. And over the course of over 30 years of doing this, I have heard so many terrible stories from employees when they get a diagnosis from their doctor. It's the worst day of their life, and that experience of having to deal with a terrible diagnosis is awful. But in addition to having to deal with that, then they get, like you said, thrust into this healthcare system, which is I'm responsible for healthcare for my company around the globe. And there is no healthcare system more complicated than the U.S. system is. And so not only do they have to deal with the emotional aspect of this terrible diagnosis, but then they got to deal with this, horrible healthcare system. And Quantum has helped with that because you do the hard work for the employee. By you partnering with the employee, they can focus on themselves and focus on their health and getting better, while you all focus on helping them to maneuver through this, the complicated system. I don't see that need getting any less over the next 5 to 10 years. I see it, just increasing. And I'm so excited, to see some of the partnerships you're developing in the technology space. Because, when I was first introduced to your company 20 years ago, in terms of the data that you shared with me about the company I was working for at the time, you had better data analytics than any consultant that I had ever worked with in the 20 years prior to that.
That's saying a lot given the firms that you were with. Wow.
Yes. I mean, the data that I was used to getting was much more company-wide, high-level kind of data. And you provided data that was more specific to what our employees were spending, how they were spending our healthcare dollars. And I can honestly say that you've gotten better and better at it. I was impressed at the time, and of course, I meet with someone on your team at least once a year in person, And as we go through the data, the analytics and the data gets better and better and better.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Yeah, I too see so much promise from technology. Medical treatment is a big area. But I do think that, like, particularly when you look at things like cancer care, it's gone from, a very limited set of, like, if you just take breast cancer to now it's like 200 different kinds of breast cancer and different treatments depending on your molecular structure and your genetic structure and all of those kinds of things. And I just think it makes it so much more complex and harder for people to know what the right treatment is. And that was part of our acquisition of Umbold, is that that technology that they have and the data that they have is in addition to what we have, which will allow us to see that. But um, I still think it still comes down to you. I think you alluded to, humans are humans. We've been this way for 60,000 years. We're not going to change in 2 years because new technology comes out. And we have a very common response, irrespective of our education level and everything. It's just superhuman.
If I could share with you one, I've had many, many experiences with employees and their very human, experience with the healthcare system. And one comes to mind. Uh, you know, there was a lady, an employee whose husband had a terminal illness. And, of course, she was working with Quantum to help her manage the healthcare system as she helped her husband to be as comfortable as possible. And at the end, of course, he ended up in hospice care, and she had developed such an incredible friendship and relationship with her Quantum warrior that as she was sitting in hospice care with her husband on the last day of his life, one of the people that she wanted to speak with that day was her warrior at Quantum Health. And she told me as she came back to work that she was so happy that we had decided to partner with Quantum Health and that they were there with her through the entire experience right till the end. So, that's just one example. I can give you a whole lot more, but I thought that one, showed how important empathy is and how important that empathetic relationship between the warrior and the employee is.
Empathy. Well, thank you for sharing that with me, because I hear those all the time, and that's what gets me up in the morning. That's why I did this, because I thought the world could be better. Oh wow, I love it when I hear those stories, and they touch me deeply. Empathy, yeah, I think empathy is the great unlocker. There was a time where, when we were growing, you've seen us grow. So I'll have another question on that. But, when I think we started working with you in about 2006. And then it was like 2013, the company had tripled by that time, which is still a lot smaller than it is today. Right. And, we were getting past the point where you could have just trust everybody knew the right thing to do. I couldn't name all the employees. We were like maybe 250, 300 people. Now we're 2,400. So I couldn't name everybody. And, they were divided into the pods, and that was working well. But, we had to come up with this idea. We had to come up with a way to scale it better. And I remember one of our executives, Shannon, and I sat down and thought about, okay, if there's only one thing we can get people to do that will be a huge unlocker for the members, for the clients, everybody, what is it? Because I feel like if you can nut it down to one thing, then you can ladder everything else up to it, and you can create the right expectations. And, we went out, observed a lot and everything, and we came back, and our conclusion was it was empathy. Empathy is the one unlocker. And what I've discovered with this business is that the data, which, we've seen data for years and years and years, and this industry is replete with data, lots of data, but data doesn't give you insights. And the thing is data can tell us that somebody's on a journey, somebody's moving from point A to point B, but it doesn't tell us what's going on. At the end of the day, what you have to get is you have to extend empathy. And we actually call it sanctuary. You were asking me about the pictures on my wall. We call it sanctuary. We extend empathy because we need that person, your employee, the woman whose husband had a terminal illness. We want her to understand that we are here for her. We are here to she can trust us. We care. And the best way you can express that is to give empathy. And if you can give empathy, then you get the unlocker to let them tell you what's really going on. And when they tell you what's really going on, you can see many solutions in that. People need a lot of help. They need a lot of solutions. Always one of my stories is one time one of our warriors told us that that they had a member who had a condition that required some home health services, and the doctor had prescribed those home health services. And what was happening is the service would show up at the member's house, and the member wouldn't let them in. And so we reached out to the member. We had a relationship. It starts with a relationship. So we had a relationship with the member to kind of find out what was happening. She understood about the service. She understood what it was supposed to do. And, kind of kept probing. And she had an ER visit in the interim. And we explained to her, that wasn't really a suitable lifestyle for her. She was very compromised in her lifestyle. And she finally confessed that her challenge was that she was a hoarder. She was very embarrassed by the state of her house, and she would not allow anyone to come in. And from that moment, then we would talk to her about, was she willing to, maybe address this issue? She was. So we got social services in there to work with her, kind of come up with a plan, get everything kind of set so that she felt more comfortable with her living environment, and then brought the medical service back in. And it was a real success. But if you didn't have that empathy, if you hadn't had that conversation, if you hadn't created trust for her to be able to tell you that, you would never have solved it. She would have gone on, she would have gotten worse, and it would have been a bad outcome for her. But empathy is really important. So I'm curious, so you've worked with us all these years. What have you seen that's changed? Have you seen, on the good side and on the bad side? So we try that hardwiring with empathy.
Yeah, in terms of empathy, had it not been for that part of the quantum equation, none of the companies that I worked for would have done, signed up to do business with Quantum. The empathy piece of it and the culture at Quantum is just as important as the financial savings were, particularly at the company at Mary Kay. And, I have been worried, as you probably know, because I have shared it with your executive team almost every year for the last 20 years, as this company keeps growing, what's going to happen to the culture? Because in my mind, Trott was the culture. Kara got it. She was an extremely empathetic person. She understood the model. The company was successful because of Kara. But you all have proved to me that I didn't need to have any concerns, because as you know, I come up there every year to Columbus, Ohio. And it is amazing to me. I remember saying to one of the executives that, as y'all grow from, I think you had 30 or so employees when I was first introduced to Quantum Health.
We were tiny.
Yeah. And I'm like, that small and mighty company led by Kara Trott is awesome. But how is Kara, as the company grows, how are you going to create thousands of Karas? And what I have discovered is that you've done a pretty doggone good job, because as I go up there to Columbus, Ohio each year, I see the same culture. The building is bigger. There's a whole lot more employees. There's thousands of employees there now. way more systems, more sophisticated employees than you had in the beginning, but the culture is exactly the same. And I'm like, how is she pulling this off? Because you're growing just tremendously. But in my mind, I thought probably the way she's pulling this off is through her pod system, where she's got all of these mini quantum healths. So you've got these people working in each one of these pods, and each one of them run their pod like it's a mini quantum health. And so that helps her to maintain that culture and the culture of empathy that is still there today.
Well, and that's you made a great point earlier too, which is all three of the companies we worked with you are very different. Why do you think it's worked in each of those situations?
I think it's what you said a little earlier. People are people, and through several different industries, the results of the quantum model has worked almost identically. The savings have been significant, and the empathy and the help that the employees have gotten has been appreciated, and employees have responded to that. I can't imagine the model not working no matter what the industry is.
Yeah, because I often get the industry question, but I find that to be true. But I do think, our intentional decision to kind of break it into the pods, I think has definitely fostered that sense that, because the pod is assigned to a small group of employers. And so it's very personal, right? You know your pod manager, you know the folks that are working with your members and everything. It's super personal. And I think that is, that helps, and also because we've hardwired our expectations around, you give sanctuary, then you give expertise, and you warrior for people, which basically means that you're solutioning, you're doing whatever it takes to make something work out so that that person can get through the next step on their journey safely and in the most efficient way possible. And you're doing it in an environment of trust and caring. I mean, in our mission, we say, our job is to extend love to people because that's ultimately what it takes to make sure that people feel safe and cared for along this journey. So I think you're right that the pods probably have contributed, but it also helps to have a leadership team and people who also believe in that. And I would have said, like, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have been too sure if you brought in a different equity investor and everything, if that would have held true. But, at our size, it's very ingrained, and we would not hire people who didn't believe in that and exhibit it. So I've been pleased too because I had the same concerns you had. I was like, I'm only one person. I cannot do this for the rest of my life. I'm on a
Yeah.
mission, but there's still only one of me, and I can't really have this company dependent on me. That was part of my challenge with scaling and growing it is it really can't be dependent on me. It has to be dependent on the culture, and the culture has to accomplish it, and the people who attend to that culture and believe in it. And you can only hire people who believe in that because people who don't, they won't work out here. And you have to be
Yep.
disciplined about that too, which is not the easiest thing either. What are you most excited about as we head into, we talked about medical technology, but with respect to your relationship with quantum health and the other things that you're doing, what are you most excited about with respect to our ability to continue to evolve this in a world of AI and everything?
I, you know, you really answered the question when you asked the question. I am really excited. I think AI is likely to have a greater impact on the healthcare space than almost any other space that I can think of in the country. And I am so excited to watch how quantum health is able to use the AI technology while continuing to maintain the people touch empathetic approach, because you can't lose that. And
Yeah.
but I was excited about the recent partnership that you
Mhm.
announced. I think the combination of you you all have gotten so big that you have an incredible amount of data, available to you, and being able to use that data to help individuals, our employees, to get better health outcomes that help us save money as well. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, watching you all use your partnerships that you have made to create almost a new experience for our employees and their relationship to quantum health. I'm excited to see what you're going to do with it.
Yeah, yeah, so am I. Actually, it's funny because I haven't, we're considered in, kind of healthcare technology, although it's a tech enabled product. But I'm really excited about AI. I couldn't really wrap my head around too much of the ones and zeros and hard programming and stuff. We've always had really good systems. I've tended to hire people for that and live more on the side of, developing the culture, developing the business model. Kind of, I was out doing sales for a while and client services and, kind of thinking more market facing has been my role. But when I started about a year and a half ago to see AI and learn more about it. And then, we have a couple people in our office that are committed fully to it. I just got so excited because it's so intuitive and it is so reliant on data. We have 26 years of data of millions of people who we've worked with and the insights. And what I'm most excited about is thinking about the experience of our warriors. So, if we think that healthcare is complex for consumers on a journey, it's equally complex for our warriors. I mean, how many point solutions does Mary Kay have separate from quantum health?
We use the Trott approach
Good.
to our point solutions. Don't chase every shiny object that comes along. So we only have about 4 point solutions.
That's good. You're good. We're going to get our other clients down there because the statistic I heard the other day was our average client now has 18
Yeah.
these things and and it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for your peers and the team that works with you. But it's also overwhelming for our warriors because our warriors have to know, the most recent developments in medical technology are, we have doctors that work with the pods and we have to understand kind of where healthcare is going so that we can help match people up with clinical trials. We can match them up with the doctors that have the best knowledge about those things and help give them resources and understand what's happening when we're working with the physicians. We have to understand our clients' benefits, and a lot of our clients have very complex, different benefits depending on different divisions and things like that. And then we have to also understand the whole ecosystem of these point solutions. And our clients expect us to be able to use those, and they actually expect us to be able to kind of advise them on how the member is experiencing those as well, which is has historically been harder to get at because that you have to have data for. And companies that are inside quantum health, we can't just access their data. They have to give it to us. And not everybody is as willing to do that as one would hope. And I just look at the things that our warriors have to navigate. And then, of course, you have all your community services and stuff. And I just think, how do they do it while being empathetic? They're trying to figure out. And we've done a whole lot of work around creating Warrior Assist, which really helps. It helps them listen, it helps listen in on the calls and assemble all these things so that they can see, oh, here's what the person has. It's really saving a lot of time for our warriors of having to kind of find those in various directories and things like that, and to just have it be served up. And it's they are amazed at it. It's so helpful to them to be able to kind of eliminate some of the complexity and the having to search for things or look up something or whatever. And I'm just really, really excited about that. And at the same time, you mentioned the analytics. I think it's going to be super powerful for us to understand even more the how a consumer journey unfolds, where are those opportunities for impact, and how to, be able to do more prediction of the consumer experience. I mean, we've always been able to look at the data, but the actual underlying experience, because AI lets you get at all this unstructured data that you previously had trouble getting to. So I'm excited about it. And I've actually I'm not like the first person to adopt all these new technologies, but it's the first one that seems much more intuitive and exciting to me because it works alongside a human-centered business. And a lot of people think it's going to put human services out of business. I don't think so. I think it's going to let people who are doing the human contact actually be more skilled and more knowledgeable and be able to focus. That's what we've seen in our business. They can focus a lot more of their time and energy on just listening as opposed to trying to document at the same time. I mean, it's taken the effort of documenting while you're talking out. And I don't know how people did that. I'm not very good at typing while I'm talking to somebody. So I mean, our people are really good at that, but now it allows them to focus even more. So I
Yeah.
too am excited. I'll be interested to see how it rolls out. I don't see a world where, I mean, people will choose to interact solely through digital or technology channels. I think people will choose to interact with people on the complex things. And you see a lot of things where it's going to replace everybody. I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. There's still something human to human there.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm excited about something technology oriented. Technology has never been my strong suit, but I'm really excited about it. So
That's great. That's great. Well, I'm trying to think, is there anything else that you want to share about your experience or things that you're looking forward to or things that you're concerned about too?
Kara, I just would like to thank you for the tremendous difference that you have made to the healthcare space, and being with you for the last 20 years has just been the journey of a lifetime.
Oh my, thank you.
And I appreciate all the help that early on. I mean, you and I 20 years ago were kind of learning this business together.
You were.
I wasn't as nearly as smart in the healthcare space as you were. I was learning from you, and you were learning how to make your business better. And what going from that to where you are today with thousands of employees has just been just a tremendous pleasure, and I'm excited to see what you're going to do next.
Well, thank you, Mike, because I have to tell you, you were one of my early believers and one of the most impactful. And I can't thank you enough for taking a chance on us when we were tiny, but also just going on this journey with me for the last, it has been 20 years. Yeah, going on this journey with me for all this time and just our personal relationship. It has meant a lot. It is mental. You have impacted this business. You've impacted all these lives, and that means the world to me. So thank you so much. And that's near and dear to my heart. Very, very near.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Kara.
Likewise. Yeah, there are people you encounter along your way that you'd never be there without them, and you just love them for that. So thank you, Mike. Well, and thank you for being on this podcast for me. I'm not a professional podcaster, so uh, I'm doing my best. I'm trying to make it conversational, and hopefully this was a good experience. But thank you so much for being with us.
Yes, thank you. I'm not a podcaster either. Seeing myself on camera is not my favorite thing to do.
I hate it.
I'm like, surely I don't really look like that. But
You don't. You look much better in person, as do I. I always have to say that.
yeah, it's been great.
Thank you.
You've been listening to No One Alone. To connect with Kara, go to karatrott.com. No One Alone with Kara Trott is a production of Forbes Books.